Hi, this is Donna Gates, and I'm here with my friend Sean Jacowitz. I'd just like to tell you a little bit about how Sean and I met each other. A couple of years ago, I went to the University of Georgia, down to the department to post a note saying that I needed a genetic student to help me with a program I wanted to develop. And he is a graduating student from the University of Georgia in their genetics department, which is one of the best, really amazing program. Georgia has amazing science in all different fields. And Sean's graduating in about 2 more months, and then he goes off to med school. Really, the reason I wanted to do this is that Sean told me months ago that he was really, really interested in CBD. Now, as most of you probably know, CBD is taking the world by storm. And every time I read about it, people talk about it as if it's this absolutely harmless miracle substance that everybody should be taking because it does everything that you need it to do, from cancer to anxiety, sleeping better, whatever. So I asked Sean, in all this research that you're doing on CBD and genes, is that true? Is it this miracle substance, and is it perfectly safe? So Sean, welcome. Thank you for doing this with me.
Yeah.
Let me ask you that question again. Is CBD and THC perfectly safe if we look at our genes?
Well, CBD and THC, they're very different as far as their effects. So they are safe for some people and not for others. And some of that has to do with genes, others like pregnancy. I would not recommend using any THC or cannabis product while pregnant. There's been some really good research done about similar symptoms to fetal alcohol syndrome. It's a terrible.
Interesting.
So CBD and THC cannabinoids, which is the type of chemicals these are, play a major role in the development of a human being during gestation. And then, like we were talking about before, in different people with different genetics, different mutations, and some of the genes that metabolize and use these chemicals, they can play different roles. Sometimes really good, very helpful roles, and for some people there are sociopathic or psychological problems that some might have, like bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. So people definitely, if they're going to be using um, chemicals like this in almost everything all the time, it'd be a really good idea for you or your doctor to know, what sort of genes were you born with, variants you have, and how that might affect you.
Well, so what you're saying basically is if a woman is carrying a child and the baby's developing basically from an egg and a sperm cell, in that development process, CBD or cannabidiols, I should say, just the whole general category, is going to be affecting the child during the period of development, or?
Yes, yes. There's several articles that have come out recently that show um, that it would not be a good idea to use CBD while pregnant. So,
Well, maybe that'll become more clear as we go along, but let's start from the beginning if we could, because I assume, because of the field that I'm in, and you go in a health food store and CBD and science, and I mean, everywhere I turn, there's an article, a magazine, and something on CBD. And so let's start at the beginning, because there are people out there that actually don't know what it is yet. And what is a cannabinoid? What are cannabidiols? What's the difference between THC, which is one of them, and CBD?
so cannabidiol, or CBD, as we all know it, is a fat-soluble molecule, which means it dissolves in oil or fat, and it's in a family of chemicals called cannabinoids, and they're called cannabinoids because they were first discovered in the cannabis plant. So, but these cannabinoids really they led us to discover a system that we have inside of our own bodies that we call the endocannabinoid system, which is a series of proteins and cell structures that use these cannabinoids that we either can create or we can take in from plants like cannabis to affect us in different ways. And it's
So are you saying that our own body produces these substances? And so
yeah,
you don't just get it from taking it, purchasing it, or buying a brownie or something with CBD in it, or a gummy.
yeah.
Like you can get it endogenously, you can make it endogenously, or you can go purchase it, right?
Absolutely, yeah. You are consistently using it. In fact, it's the two what are called endocannabinoids, which means inside of, and then cannabinoid. They are called 2-AG or 2-arachidonidyl glycerol and anonymide. I always have trouble pronouncing that word. Anonymide, which is also abbreviated as AEA. Both of those are long fatty chains or fatty acid chains. And they're produced by omega-6. So omega-6
Mm-hmm.
fatty acids that you get in your normal diet. They're specifically aranidonic, aranidonic acid.
So wait, I just know, in understanding the omega-6, like linoleic acid, for example, continues to become arachidonic acid, and then you're saying the CBD, the cannabinoids are from arachidonic acid? They're
Not CBD, but 2-AG and AEA.
Oh,
Those
okay.
from it. Yep. And they play many roles in your body. But what I like to sort of explain them as is they are a way, these two chemicals, these two fat soluble chemicals, they're a way for your cells to speak to each other and kind of tell each other how much they should respond to a stimuli, how excited or not they should be to a message they get. That's sort of what the endocannabinoid system does throughout the entire body. We find it in almost every tissue. Every tissue that we've looked at so far, we can find this system at work doing kind of mediating the response your cells have.
So we find it in the brain and nervous system. We find it in the gut.
Mhm.
Uh, what other systems are
Yeah,
there?
we find
Maybe
it
respiratory
throughout
system.
the respiratory system, throughout the immune system. So almost
Mhm.
every immune cell responds from the system. The endocannabinoid system. We find it in the reproductive system, and we don't even know what that means yet. Uh,
Mhm.
Most of the research right now, and to be fair, there hasn't been many years of this research because of the illegality of the substances. It's been very difficult to do this research. Most of it comes from Israel because they've been more progressive with this, but now because of legality in other countries and states, it's been easier to do. But what we've mostly focused on, it seems, that is the nervous system, particularly the brain, um, and pain, as well as neurodevelopment. I actually wrote a whole grant proposal on neurodevelopment and CBD, but and then also the immune system. We've done a lot of research on the ability to control and suppress the immune system with these endocannabinoids, and now with CBD and THC.
I think that's interesting that omega-6 in our diet ends up producing this. It's the first time I've heard that. And that arachidonic acid it's just a molecule I've been very fascinated with because it's good and bad, like anything else really. But I had no idea that these two molecules that you're talking about,
And
which these molecules, do you mind just talking about them a little bit more? Like,
Mhm.
are they, I don't even know what kind of question to ask around them. Like,
well, I wanted to
they,
bounce off what you said about the arachidonic acid,
mhm,
the fact that it's good and bad, and we find this a lot with fat soluble molecules. Uh, they all need a balance, like everything in life,
mhm, mhm,
particularly these derivatives of omega-6. Can't have too much, shouldn't have too little.
Mm-hmm.
Similar things can be said about uh, THC and CBD. There's definitely a balance, and too much could lead to problems you don't want, and too little might just not be effective. So,
Just to let people know, two common and popular foods that we eat that increase arachidonic acid are egg yolks and liver. I know people don't eat a lot of liver, but it is from a healthy chicken.
yeah.
And prepared, like when I make it for people, I put in a whole lot of onions and cook them very slowly to make them sweet, and then add in liver, and then even a lot of the restaurants will use like pomegranate molasses or something sweet with it because it helps if you sweeten it up a little bit. Garlic, onions, and garlic, and then saute the liver, and then put in the pomegranate molasses is a great thing to add, but you don't have to put that in. And so the sweeter you make it, the more palatable it is. And I wish people did eat a little bit of it, almost a little bit every week medicinally, because it is an amazing. The liver is full of incredible nutrients, but
In general.
eggs, yeah, all organ meats, yeah. So just for people, just practically, even if you're just like eggs and egg yolks, you do want arachidonic acid. And now, from what Sean's seeing, I suddenly see another important reason we should be having it.
You know what's really interesting too is that so this endocannabinoid system, and I touch on this at the beginning of the book I'm working on about this subject, but this 2-AG and AEA, these are released particularly in moments of social bonding, in dance, in exercise. In your brain, it's an odd reward system. It's not quite like dopamine, and there's still more to be worked out about it, but it's been extremely important for the development. Some research suggests it's been extremely important for the development of culture. It's kind of weird.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Why do you think it's been so long that it was discovered, the whole cannabinoid system in the body, endocannabinoid system?
Well,
Suddenly we're hearing about it, but you didn't hear about it. I never heard about it when I was I was at Georgia too, and took science courses and continue to stay interested in science and nutrition forever, from once I got out and onward too. But no one ever mentioned endocannabinoid system ever until just recently.
yeah, well, so the reason it probably has to do with our technology has just gotten so much better. I mean, I'm sitting here in my lab. I could sequence, someone's genome in here, and extract DNA in a matter of seconds if I want to. Like it's crazy what we can do now. And the endocannabinoid system is not quite like something like the skeletal system, where it's quite obvious that you have bones, or the nervous system, because it's quite obvious you have nerves. The endocannabinoid system is a system inside of each cell. So now that we can look at cells very closely and see, proteins and how proteins interact, and genes, now even we can see what genes make what, all this very complicated stuff. Now that's why we can, look even closer and see these systems that we didn't see before.
And just for people listening, the DNA, our DNA is inside each cell, and then inside each cell also is the mitochondria, and they have their own unique genes. So now we can see that, and of course we couldn't until very recently. So I see your point.
I've actually, speaking of mitochondria, there are CBD, cannabinoid receptors, which CBD acts on. There are cannabinoid receptors on mitochondria.
Oh, interesting. Well, they're the powerhouse. Again, that's a funny word. People may not have heard that word. But the powerhouse of the cell, energy comes from there. Yeah. What would they be doing why are they on the mitochondria?
It's fascinating. So it's very, very new discoveries. I think it's probably in the last 2 years that we're starting to see this. Even maybe last year. I stumbled upon the research recently, but what it seems to be, and this is more speculative because, like I said, it's newer, but when your body, so like I said, your body releases these endocannabinoids, AEA and 2AG, when you exercise.
Mhm.
So when your cells, particularly your muscle cells, get these cannabinoids as signals, it, it gets transferred to the mitochondria. They pick it up, and the mitochondria can then perform, like they transform in ways so that they can perform with less oxygen. So they sort of prepare for the oxygen deprivative cycle that you go through with anaerobic exercise. So it's pretty interesting because THC right now is labeled as a performance enhancing drug. Like you can't go, you can't test positive in the Olympics or in MMA or UFC and stuff like that. And it's probably for a good reason, because this THC, not only does it give you sort of a mental aspect of like pain tolerance, but physically your need for oxygen at the muscular level decreases, so you can operate on less oxygen faster, or you can get to that state faster. It's interesting, and there could be a lot to it as far as energy production without the need as much oxygen, and
That is
very
interesting.
important in the sports world.
Just to tell people that don't know this, and probably many people probably don't, the mitochondria need glucose and oxygen. That's their fuel, basically. So you can see that this is really yeah, I can see why researchers are getting excited at this discovery, basically. But let's back up well, not even back up, but I'm not sure that we've covered all the basics, but how are THC and CBD different?
Yes. So CBD is the non-psychoactive version or non-psychoactive cannabinoid in hemp or cannabis. THC is the one, tetrahydrocannabidiol, is the one that most people are familiar with as far as like the traditional or stereotypical stoner. It's the one that gets you high. You get that euphoric sense. And we're not even quite sure why that is. Many pharmaceutical companies are trying to figure that out, because the evidence that THC is extremely powerful as a medicine is blatant. It's obvious to anyone in the field, but they don't know at what dose does it no longer give you a high. Because if you're going to go to work and you take THC to treat your back pain, you can't really show up high. That's what they don't want. So THC is the one that makes you high. CBD seems to have no psychoactive effect, and yet it still provides amazing benefits for suppressing the immune system or taking away pain and several other things.
I know that one of the things that they're finding out is that the combination is very beneficial. And I know in the autism community, they'll use mostly CBD, say 80% CBD mixed with 20%, say THC, and get better results, say with seizures, for example. So they're often used together, in case people are interested in that. And then there's many other cannabidiols besides those two. And how much research how many are they finding, and how much research do they have on all those others?
Yeah, so there are quite a lot. I don't know the exact number of the new ones, because I know they're finding more on a regular basis. But there's CBN, CBDB. I can read off a few. CBC, CBL, CBV, THCV. It's the list is quite long. But we don't know what they all do yet. CBD and THC were just the ones we found first. THC was famous, but then they found CBD and like, oh wow, this does everything THC can without being psychoactive. So we'll explore that, and now we're just as we pick apart the cannabis plant, we learn more and more every day.
Mm. And how's it grown? Like, is there a difference? Some strains are better than others. Do they specifically grow the plant to have particular, features, certain qualities or features that we need, say, as a medicine?
Yeah. So you for for the whole CBD industry, they typically will use hemp plants and not like the marijuana plant that has THC. So the hemp plant has been selectively bred over generations to only produce high amounts of CBD and not THC. Um, and there's no quite best strain. I was looking into that, and everyone has their own particular strain. They've got some great names like Blue Dream or Hawaiian Haze and stuff like that. But yeah, they grow these plants and then they extract the CBD through either a liquid CO2 extraction or alcohol extraction. Doesn't really matter. And then you're left with the pure CBD.
Well, one thing I just learned from working with families whose children have disabilities like autism, for example, and others, even sometimes more serious things, they give their children the CBD. But what they notice is at a certain period of time that particular strain doesn't work anymore. And then they need to move to another strain. It's almost like the body, I guess, gets used to that. This is just something, obviously no research. I mean, I don't think any research has been done on this. It might be something you want to look into, but it's just something the parents have noticed. So I've mentioned that to people because they'll go in and they'll take a brand like from the health food store, like Charlotte's Web, one of their, and 500 milligrams of it or whatever. And then and maybe it stops working after a while. So people might like to know that you want to change to a different strain from a different company, basically.
Yeah. And I can see why that might happen. There's something known as the Entourage effect. So
can you explain that?
Yeah, so it's basically it's sort of more of a phenomenon. We're not quite totally sure how it works exactly, but when taking plant medicine, and we see this in many other herbal medicines, right? Whether it's good just to take the whole plant or an extract of the plant, but basically, for whatever reason, the natural ratio of chemicals that you find from the plant have a more effective ability to last longer or to give you an effect for longer than just taking the pure extract of it. And there can be reasons for this, specifically with CBD. Your body, just like with caffeine or dopamine, as it gets more of it, it makes more receptors, which means you need then more to activate as many receptors again and then again and again, and you build up a tolerance. I can see it happening with epilepsy because of how epilepsy is a problem between excitatory neurons, and this is observed a lot in those sort of medications. So yeah, I can see why this might be an issue. Cycling different either companies, because like I said, we're just finding out about these new cannabinoids. So, companies might not know which entourages they have. They might have CBD, and then also CBN, and then this one has CBD, maybe a little bit of CBV.
Yeah, that's interesting. This is all information no one writes about, doesn't know anything about. Right. But I'd like to know more about the liver, because I think if people know, I think that that everything in the body goes through, every hormone, every molecule that we eat has to be processed by the liver, broken down stage 2 and stage 1. It's broken down in stage 2. Something like glutathione is attached to it, some amino acids or whatever, and then it's handed to put out. So the bile is produced, and these go into the bile, and then the bile goes into the small intestine and in the colon and out. So that's how the liver is working. But what about, how is the liver working with CBD? Are there genes like the CYP450 genes that are the liver genes, which I think are about 52 of those? You'll find that certain medicines are degraded very quickly by a gene, or degraded very slowly by a gene, or so medicine doctors are going to be looking at these CYP450 genes, and they're going to be seeing, is this medicine that I'm prescribing to this person going to work for them? Will it just be degraded really quickly and I have to give them a higher dose, or it stays in the body for a really long time because it's degraded very slowly, so it's building up? they do know that about the CYP450 genes. Are they looking at CBD and these genes, the CYP450 liver enzymes or genes?
Yeah. So there is research coming out about that, and I have a few articles I've read that look into the different variants of the CYP genes that break down CBD and THC. Some can speed up or slow down the first phase of metabolism, and then there are also other proteins that break down specifically these cannabinoids. So you have things like MAGL, MAGL, um, and FAAH. Those two break down.
Those are names of genes. FAAH.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
People should know that genes are either numbers or letters or a combination. I mean, they're usually letters and numbers, or just letters or something. They don't have nice names like Sarah and Bob
yeah,
or
some of them do. Some of them
do.
have really great names like Sonic the Hedgehog. That one's one of
Oh,
the names, but that's a whole different topic. It depends on who gets to name them. But uh,
mm,
but yeah, and for the listeners, MAGL is monoacyl glycerol lipase, and FAAH is fatty acid amide hydrolase. Not very important, but in case you were wondering. And these break down these cannabinoids, your endocannabinoids, and these cannabinoids you take in. But yes, the liver can either metabolize it faster or slower. Now, there's not really a toxic level for cannabinoids. You can't really take too much. The worst that would happen is you might get nauseous. As far as CBD is concerned, THC is a little bit different. Anxiety is associated with higher amounts, so too much can definitely be a little more paranoid. You get that from the stereotypical stoner aspect, sort of thing, and it shows up there. So, yeah, that's the liver. I'm actually pretty concerned about how the lungs handle it, though, because of how most people, throughout, I guess, recent history, maybe or more historical or prior history, uh, you know, THC and CBD have entered the body through the lungs, and now more than ever, with these vaporizers, the THC levels in these vaporizers are above 90%, where a regular plant that you might smoke right now is about 30%, and about 20 years ago it was only like 12%. So we're taking in really high amounts of these cannabinoids, and they are well documented to suppress the immune system. So if you are taking in, these high and these strong of dosages directly to, an area of your body that's constantly exposed to things like viruses and bacteria, and you're weakening your immune system in that area, it doesn't surprise me that pneumonia is associated with these vapes. So it's just
so people that are vaping, breathing it into the lungs, they're weakening the immune system in the lungs. So are you saying that CBD and THC actually weaken our immune system?
yes,
Throughout the body, and then in individual organs like the lungs, they're weakening the immune system of the lungs. So if we got, say, the Wuhan virus that's coming up really, really hurting China, that usually the people die of pneumonia from that virus. So as that's my understanding anyway. And so if they were taking in THC or CBD with a weakened immune system in their lungs, they're fighting back and getting over the pneumonia is less likely to happen. They're less likely to survive, in other words, right? Is that what you're
yeah,
saying?
yeah. So just like traditional medicine and Western medicine has agreed that taking Tylenol or acetaminophen when you have a fever is not a particularly good move because it suppresses the immune system. The fever is the symptom itself is actually your body fighting against whatever infection you have. CBD and THC, these cannabinoids can do a very similar thing. They can suppress your white blood cells. It basically tells them to not divide and not to move towards the infection. There's a lot of research behind this right now that with that, I would suggest that anyone who has symptoms of either the flu or the Wuhan virus or just generally feeling sick, using THC or sorry, using CBD at this time wouldn't be wise. It might make you feel a little bit better, but that's, that might prolong your infection time and might prevent you from getting better sooner or at all.
So it might be working on the nervous system to calm down any anxiety or pain,
Yeah.
but it's suppressing the immune system. And basically, have you looked at any research on the microbiome, the effect of THC or CBD on the microbes in our gut?
Yeah, so I have looked for it. There isn't much on it yet, unfortunately, with how little we know yet about um, the the microbiome and the endocannabinoid system. They haven't quite met yet in the literature. Um, so I wish there was a little bit more, but we're not quite sure how they would react, honestly. It'd be interesting.
Maybe they haven't produced endocannabinoids of their own or something. It would be really, really interesting.
Yeah.
We know I actually have a recipe for a pumpkin pie with CBD baked into it, and then they're gummies, of course, so brownies and things. So people are taking them in through their digestive tract, and so how is it? What do you? I mean, and that's where the microbes live, at the bottom of in the colon.
Yeah.
So that'd be interesting to see that. But do you know anything about smoking it or vaping it and then eating it? Any difference there?
Well, the dosage would be different for sure. So if you're going
Mm.
to inhale it, you would need a much lower dosage because it's going straight into the bloodstream. Whereas when you digest it, ingest and digest it, um, you would lose some, and then whatever gets through the gut into the blood would be a much more diminished amount. So if you were trying to go for like a pumpkin pie that reduced anxiety, you probably need to increase the CBD dose quite substantially. I don't know what exactly you have to do, how much more, but it'd probably be quite more. Those gummies and candies that have CBD in them, I
Yeah,
and other
they
people,
taste good.
they do taste good, but they're not really effective for anything as far as um, measurable effects.
They're really basically wasting our money. I
I
know
would.
there's the liposomal form where people put it in their mouth with a fat and then hold it. So that would be probably a better way, don't you
Yeah,
think?
and I know of a couple companies that are trying, or they might have succeeded already, with a water soluble form, and that would be very powerful.
Oh, actually, I do know. I actually bought some for my dog. It
Oh,
is water soluble, and I bought it in a little plastic bottle. And I have one little, my daughter's dog. Actually, she's got a lot of anxiety, so it is water soluble. Because I thought, oh, I'll just get water and put the CBD. I've got CBD, of course, and I'll just put it in the water. But then I found out that it's this special. It's really not for dogs; it's for humans. But what I found out was different about it. It was a water soluble form. I have no idea how effective it is, but come to think of it, they do have it. I have some in the refrigerator, as a matter of fact.
it's good. I mean,
Well,
it's easier to use then.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know how effective it is. Actually, she doesn't drink enough water at a time to tell. But so you just see, look over my nose. So can you just say, talking about the FAAH gene,
Yeah.
where's that gene found? It's obviously not a liver gene. Like, can you just talk
Yeah.
about that gene a little bit more? What kind of research? Why did you bring it up?
Yeah. So, well, the FAAH is one of the many genes that are involved with producing proteins in the endocannabinoid system. Um, it's part of the system or part of the whole cycle that breaks down uh, the endocannabinoids or exogenous cannabinoids like CBD or THC. So if you have variants that work faster, you might need more CBD or THC to have an effective dose. If you have variants that work slower, you might need less because it's being broken down less. It's like if your car just had better mileage on it, you don't need as much gas to get where you want to go. Same idea. So yeah, FAAH is one of these, but there are more. There are at least four, and they're also finding more of these. So
So the FAAH is a summary. It's a genes that are breaking down and determining how quickly we're metabolizing the CBD.
yeah,
Basically, that's what it does. It breaks down the CBD in the body.
mhm. That's right. Yeah,
Okay.
CBD, 2AG, AEA, THC breaks down all of those chemicals.
Well, what about the AK? I did a little research too. What
Right.
about the AKT gene? Another one I found was associated with CBD.
Yeah,
Do you know anything about that one? Have you?
I do. So yeah, I saw you brought that up. AKT, that could be today's actually, I think, cancer day or something. I don't know. Can't. Anyways, it's today they celebrate cancer and recoveries from cancer and the people who have died from cancer. AKT
Hmm.
plays a large role in cancer formation. Um, we could have a whole discussion on AKT and its role in cell division and proliferation. But the endocannabinoid system does interact with cell proliferation. Like I think I mentioned before, when you're developing as a child, when your brain's developing, you go through a stage called neurogenesis. This neurogenesis, where you create synapses between your nerve cells, is controlled largely by this cannabinoid system.
Mm. Wow.
It's these endocannabinoids, 2AG and AEA, are telling your cells, when to divide, how much to divide, how little to divide. There's a lot of signaling going on, and a lot of that is controlled by this system. And so there are mutations that can arise in the endocannabinoid system that people are beginning to think um, underlie a lot of cancers, a lot of different cancers, particularly cancers you get when you're younger, um, or different neurodegenerative diseases, epilepsy. There's, like I said, I wrote a paper all about this one gene that might be the underlying cause of epilepsy.
The AKT gene, this
Not,
particular one, or another one?
no, yeah, it's not AKT, but it does interact with this whole signaling system AKT is a part of. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a very well studied system, but it's still quite misunderstood because it's very complicated.
Mm. Well,
Very,
is it so with cancer, you've got a rebellious cells that are disobeying the normal way cells are supposed to die and divide, and so anyway, with cancer, you get this cell that's continuing to, it doesn't die basically. And so with this gene, is it interacting with that in some way? Does it keep the cell alive and help it grow, or is it stopping the cell that's trying to be a, just out of control wild cell? Is it helping get
which
rid of
gene?
that cell? The
AK.
AKT. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so AKT, basically mutations can occur with AKT. Uh, AKT is actually two proteins that join together, and when they join together, they release a signal basically saying to divide. This it sends a lot of signals, but one of the signals is to divide. And if a mutation occurs in this gene, basically that signal is left on. And if it's left on, it keeps dividing.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it also
Wow.
shuts down these signals. It shuts down autophagy, so it tells the cell.
Wow. It's a big
Hold on.
deal.
Yeah. yeah, AKT mutations in AKT are very problematic. Basically, anytime you find mutations in AKT, it results in cancer formation. Yeah, it's very well studied. As far when I say well studied, we've poked it a lot, asked a lot of questions about it.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately,
Well, so are these two genes in a report like 23andMe? Could somebody go look them up and see if they have these variants in these
not
FAAH?
not the type of mutations. The FAAH, I don't think 23andMe tests on those. The AKT mutations, no. It's different types of mutations. They're not single single nucleotide polymorphisms. They're like large inserts or deletions, and yeah, 23andMe doesn't test for things like that.
So you can't find out if this gene is a problem for you. Could you, if you ran your whole entire genome, all of them, then you could find out.
Yeah, either your whole entire genome or even a whole exome sequencing, which is much cheaper than a whole genome.
Would you tell the difference between the two?
Yeah, so a whole genome sequence is you get a sample of your cells, you crack them open, and you get all of the DNA. And it's almost too much information for most people. It's a lot of information. A lot of it's not useful for most people as far as clinical aspects of it. But then you have something called whole exome sequencing. And this is seeming to be much more useful and cheaper. What you're doing is you are only sequencing genes that are being produced, genes that are being turned into proteins. Remember, DNA makes RNA, and that RNA gets turned into proteins. So what whole exome sequencing is doing is catching it at that RNA stage and is telling you the genes that those are. And so you get to find out, what genes are making, exactly what mutations those genes have. So are you making AKT, but are you making it with, you're missing a whole section or not? And so that's both cheaper. It's about $200 last time I checked. And it can tell you much more impactful information. The genome can tell you a lot, but it doesn't.
It's more than you need to know, almost.
Yeah, for most clinicians, more than they need to know.
So with a test like 23andMe, what would you call that type of test if it's not the whole genome? What is it exactly?
Yeah, so 23andMe and Ancestry and all these like fit tests, these that you see a lot more of nowadays. These are called genotyping. So they're not sequencing in the same way that you sequence a genome. Basically, you have a chip, literally like a microchip, and it's covered in what are called oligonucleotides. That's just a fancy way of saying strands of DNA. And these strands of DNA are put there to recognize certain genes, but not all genes. They're only, I think, 23andMe is looking for like 50,000, is it? Or
I don't know. I thought they only reported on about 600, but maybe I'm wrong.
I think it's
not a very large amount compared to how many. We have over 20,000 genes. It's not that many.
Yeah, they're looking at 500,000 different sequences. Not all of those are genes, and they're looking for variations. They could be looking for variations in the same gene. So basically what they do is they take your sample, extract the DNA out of it, and then they throw it on this chip, and then it lights up if you get if it matches. So whatever matches, those are the genes, the particular variations you have in your genes.
You mentioned autophagy. I feel like I can't let that pass before we wrap things up here, but autophagy is a word that, again, nobody knew anything about a year and a half ago or so, but now everyone's talking about it. A lot of people are talking about it, particularly in the world of fasting, which is a hot topic too, because when we don't eat, if we do time-restricted feeding where we eat with a short window of 8 or 10 12 hours or something, and then the rest of the time we're not eating, time restricted feeding. So then you're not, it's in the sleeping and not eating period that autophagy occurs. And so taking it from there, that is kind of interesting what you said about the AKT gene turning off autophagy. And if you're smoking pot or taking CBD all the time, did you say that you're turning off autophagy?
Well,
It's a very important thing. Oh, and also explain what happens. What is autophagy? What's going on when the body is in that stage?
yeah. So, okay. Let me see where to start.
Yeah.
CBD.
Well, maybe start with what is autophagy, first of all, so we don't lose people.
Yeah. So autophagy, it means self-eating. That's what it translates to in Greek, and it's basically your body getting rid of weakened or useless cells. It's telling them to undergo a thing called apoptosis, which is an elegant way for a cell to kill itself. Sounds kind of brutal, but in a world of trillions of cells, every little micrometer counts, and they have to get rid of people or cells who are taking up space. So the cells are instructed very, very politely to sort of just pack up and stop existing. And
Well, one of the things I just want to inject here is that that's actually true with humans. We don't go and kill ourselves, maybe we should, but the thing is that when you study DNA, this whole science of studying the genes and all, one of the things that I've come to realize is that our DNA is very fragile. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things that damage it. Everything we're doing today that's wrong, from the toxins, the EMFs, just not getting enough sleep, the terrible diet, we're damaging our DNA. Say that again?
Just the sunlight, even just breathing air, everything. And
I wondered why. Of course, for those of us who are taking better care of ourselves, like you said, we still go out in the sun. Why does the DNA get damaged? I know that's a very hot area in research for, for anti-aging research. What can we do to stop the damage? What can we do to repair the damage? But then it seems to me, just like you said about when you're talking about autophagy, that we aren't supposed to be here, humans. There are too many of us. We have to die at some point because there's new babies coming along and they need a chance to grow and live and survive it on too. So as much as we try to slow down and prevent aging, which is a good thing, I think, I definitely think we're aging way sooner than we need to, and very painfully. But we are supposed to leave eventually, and that's why death occurs. So I just wanted to make that analogy with the cells, like you just said. They commit suicide. We're not going out and committing suicide, although my understanding is that in some populations they actually did. When people got to be
are known for it.
Yeah, they just go out and sit on the ice or something and go to sleep and die because they're no longer a valuable member of the community anymore. I often think sometimes, 5 or 6 years from now, there are going to be so many baby boomers draining our medical system that we might put in, we may be allowed to go places and take a little shot and just go to sleep, to get rid of a whole bunch of us. There's 75 million baby boomers right now. Most of us are going to be a drain on the system. But so I want to just have that analogy in there because people are probably not even thinking this way. So our cells are doing it too. So back to that, continue on, please, with the story about the cells are supposed to die and they kill themselves.
Yeah, so apoptosis is this elegant way for cells to commit suicide, and autophagy is sort of, the body's way of saying that it's time to do this. And so when you are in a fasted state, which is just another fancy way of saying starving, your body needs to make sure that it is using every calorie, every nutrient very effectively and efficiently. Like we mentioned before, mitochondria, if your mitochondria stops working, all of them in your body, if they stop working for 4 seconds, you will die. So these are furnaces that constantly need fire. And if there are burdens on the system, the body is very good at trying to deal with that. And so the idea is that fasting, intermittent fasting, helps you in today's society, because this doesn't seem like an issue when we were, outside trying to fight for our lives every day, from predators and the elements and everything like that. We maybe got to eat every other day because we had to catch our food, and this is how we evolved the majority of our existence. And now, in the last just 10,000 years, we've become much more protected. Some would say softer. Our daily lives are much easier, and we get to hold on to a lot of calories, and we get to and our bodies are very good at holding on to those calories and packing them away, and things like that. And we find chronic issues when we start to do this. And so intermittent fasting, and trying to engage autophagy seems to be a way to tap into our original or evolved mechanisms that keep us at like the peak level of health, while also keeping us away from chronic diseases like diabetes or heart disease and things like that.
Obesity is a
Yeah,
big one,
metabolic syndrome in
which is
general.
all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to kind of bring the AKT gene back into the picture,
Mhm.
and could you repeat that, what you said about autophagy? It stops that, or stops autophagy?
Yeah. It kind of depends in what cells, because AKT is sort of like a type of antenna, or not really an antenna. It's I'm trying to come up with a way to explain it. It passes signals along. That's what AKT does throughout all of your cells. Where those signals are coming from can depend on different things, but um, I'm trying to make this easier to understand. But
You know, that's the hardest thing, I think, is to take science, which takes, it's so interwoven and so complicated, and trying to explain it so people can make use of it is hard to do. And so maybe I should have asked that question, but it's not a good gene to have. It's not good, basically, to be having CBD and THC and all. If you have a variant in their gene, could we decide that? Is that correct?
Yeah, AKT is one of the very sensitive genes that controls how your cells grow. So this, if there's a problem with AKT, say in your muscle cells, it can overactivate and lead to the overactivation of a lot of other genes in your body. And some of those genes are things like MTOR, or I'm trying to think of another one off the top of my head. MTOR is a big one that it activates. And if it continuously activates it, mTOR is going to tell your body to continuously grow. And that could be really bad in the long run. So, I mean, that's kind of what cancer is that your cells are being told to continuously grow. So, yeah, AKT is a very sensitive gene. That's kind of the best way I can put it. And the endocannabinoid system does interact with it. And so...
Well, can a scientist like you and people that you're working with in your lab there and all, can they literally make a list of the genes that, we should be wary of? If you have these genes, we shouldn't be taking in CBD or THC. Do we know that already? We have that list?
Not quite. Yeah. So the field of genetics and the study of the endocannabinoid system are now just growing, and that's what I'm trying to develop is a list like that you can know if you have a variant if you have this variant, you shouldn't take it. If you have this variant, you'll be fine. And we do have that for some issues. Psychological issues are much more developed. We know that this variant here is much more associated with, you know, childhood trauma or something, or the response to trauma in childhood, or there are variants that are associated with how you respond to certain therapies to trauma, which is really interesting. So there there is, or there could be, a list that's being made about, you know, if you have these, your kid might do better in cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's cool to know. Or, you know, if you have these, you know, you would be better off taking CBD instead of, you know, this medication, or you might just need to take this instead of going to that medication. And then there are people who shouldn't take it. If you take it, it might build up in your system. You might just be more anxious than you should be, or get the reverse of what you want. They're definitely, I mean, people have always said that marijuana has a long list of pros and cons, and now we kind of know why everyone has a very different experience with it. Because, you know, these people will have different variants in their genome that are associated with these different outcomes. So some person,
So as far as doses go too, that's going to determine
yeah,
the safe dose for you,
yeah,
or none at all.
safe dose, effective dose is really what I've been most concerned about, with, you know, CBD being in everything. Most of the time it's at such a low dose, the only thing it's good for is burning your money.
Okay, so the average, I mean, you can purchase 500 milligrams, so you don't need that much. Then you would do well with half that, or much less.
Well, so say I was trying to treat like if I had general anxiety, right, daily anxiety, I wanted to use CBD as a method of treatment, I would have to take about 139 milligrams, 140 milligrams every day. So that's,
Well, I've seen supplements as low as 5 milligrams. So you'd have to take a lot of those
exactly.
dropperfuls or whatever you're saying.
Exactly. And that's sort of the
Wow.
problem I have with the industry right now, is that those people are selling 300 milligram bottles, right? The whole thing is
Yeah, if
300.
it says 300 milligrams, it means the whole bottle, not
Right.
per dose,
Yeah.
which is very different from supplements. Like if you were taking potassium citrate, for example, and it says, or selenium or zinc or anything, and there's a certain dosage on there, it means per capsule, per
Yeah.
tablet.
Yeah, it's per
And
tablet.
that's very misleading, I think, to people. They think they're getting every dose is 300 milligrams.
Right. Yeah, that's another problem I'm having with the industry, the like commercial industry side of things, is that everyone, like a gold rush, you know, everyone kind of just wants to be in the industry, and everyone's pretty much operating at this level where there's no measurable effect. So they're not going to get in trouble for causing any problems. And everyone's sort of kicked on to like a placebo effect, because everyone's always talking about the benefits, that they think it's working. But I mean, I would be willing to put down money saying that it's not an actual clinically measurable effect. And hey, look, I'm all about, you know, the placebo effect's real. And if it helps somebody, it helps somebody. But if you're trying to use your money wisely, you know, buying that $60 six-pack of soda with 60 milligrams of CBD in it, which people sell those, I think that's a good use of your money. You know,
You
so,
don't think it's a good use.
no.
Yeah. So you're not a particularly anxious person. I would say you're a perfectionist, and I love to learn and go digging, deep, but I wouldn't call you an anxious person. So if you need 130 for anxiety, what about the person who really needs it? Like, would they need 500 or?
The way I've seen it from the literature so far, and sort of where the field is going now, because it's becoming so popular. I mean, this CBD has only hit the market about a year and a half now, And it's only because the Farm Bill was passed 2 years ago that we have access to CBD. I mean, before it was a Schedule 1 drug.
Now Colorado passed a law stating that THC is legal, and it's been passed for several years now. And one of the big arguments was we should pass it because you're going to have less automobile accidents because it's safer than alcohol. Most of the time people would be drinking, driving, and die in a crash. But if we use THC, it's not going to be dangerous. But time has gone by, and they've discovered that that's just not true. As a matter of fact, there are many, many, even more. I mean, there are many accidents, even more than with alcohol. And they aren't like re-looking at that law after all. Would you say, based on your current research, do you think this is wise that the states should be passing these laws and making it available? And is there any kind of control on it? I mean, what advice would you give us on research?
I would say it's still, I think it was still a reasonable law to pass. I'm not up to date on the statistics about the car crashes. I don't think anyone should be driving under the influence of any sort of chemical. So, that's not a good way to approach it. I think the, tax revenue you get and that money that's put back into education, police enforcement, social development projects, these states that have legalized THC use recreationally and medically have seen just ridiculous amounts of social and infrastructural benefits from it, not to mention tourism benefits from it. Now, the financial benefits from it have been incredible for these states. And then as far as the age of first use, so how old someone is when they first use marijuana, has dropped significantly because education has gone up about the subject, as well as the measures to protect sort of the supply. I mean, before, all you had to do is go down to the street corner or alleyway and ask some dude, if he has some, and he'll sell it to you. But now you have to be 21 years old to go to, almost like a bar, I guess. I haven't been to any of these states, so I don't know what the experience is like, but it's much more regulated. And so that takes the power out of the criminals' hands and puts it into a more regulated space. And I think just the conversation around it, the same way alcohol can be used appropriately, I think this can be too. So I think these continuously watching these states is good. I think it should be considered, recreational versus medical. The medical aspects of it seem blatant.
Meaning behind that they should have been into this sooner.
Yeah.
When you say latent.
Yeah. I think people for medical reasons could benefit greatly, in the fact that it's on, because when a drug is scheduled 1, it means there's no medical use for it at all, which is just not true. we have so much evidence, and obviously we have states that recognize that it has a medical ability. So if at the very least it should be descheduled, just like CBD was. And then we'll see what happens with that. And then as far as recreational use, I don't know. I would say let's see how these other states keep handling it. Like I said, I think it's great financially for the state, the infrastructure benefits, and the crime decreases. So those all seem pretty good.
Now, I know you mentioned at the beginning all these other cannabinoids that they haven't really had time to look at yet, but they're finding a whole bunch of them. Do you think that's where the current research is heading, or where is the current research heading?
Yeah, so the current research is headed in a few different directions, from what I can tell. So one, you've got pharmaceutical companies that are very interested in these chemicals because, like I said, the health benefits are very well demonstrated. It's hard to ignore that, what the data is saying, that these chemicals can be very good for people's health problems. So pharmaceutical companies are very, very interested in figuring out how to make them into medicines more effective. You know, like I said about THC, is getting rid of the psychoactive part. Um, so that's a good sign, because that means a lot of private money is going to be poured into this space. That means our understanding of how to use it is going to improve significantly. Like, it could be very well that your doctor in a couple of years, it's like, yeah, just here's a, prescription for, 10 or 500 milligrams of CBN, and because
Mm-hmm.
they know that that's what you need. Well, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but that's where it's headed. Now that it's more legal, universities are becoming less worried about doing the research, because it's not much of it's the stigma on it is decreasing. And now, because of our understanding of genetics is just, I mean, my opinion about how fast we're moving with genetics. We are at light speed. Every month we're discovering something new, and quickly it'll be every week, and very soon it'll be every day.
Yeah.
So
We actually evolved from amazing ancestors. Like, in order for us to be here today, our ancestors were brave and courageous and went through extraordinarily hard times, but they survived. So we're mostly that. Like, our genes,
it's a
there's
good point.
mostly good in our genes.
That's a really feel good point. Yeah. I like
And
that.
so, yeah, knowing your variations that you can, because there's workarounds. You identify a potential problem. It's just a potential problem, and there's which I call a person's Achilles heel. But there's always a workaround. Like, you've got this potential problem. So here's what you do to prevent it from happening. I haven't found anything yet that doesn't have a workaround to it. So you find out, well, these genes here indicate that I do have an issue with detoxification, with my neurotransmitters, with my gut health, for example. Now, what are we going to do about it? And that's where the big missing is. So,
Can,
another example, a bug that I like to tell people about is the bee,
wow.
because every single little baby bee has
Mhm.
exactly the same genes, but some genes, like maybe say 15 or 20 of the little bees, are fed a different food.
Mm.
And they then evolve into queens or princesses at first, actually. And they grow a completely different, a longer body. They have a stinger that doesn't come off. Like the other bees, if they sting somebody, their stinger comes off and they die, but not the queen. Um, she's just a super bee, basically. And then all the little princesses fight with each other, and one of them wins and kills all the others. It's a cruel world in there. And then one bee becomes, the survival of the fittest. She's the new queen of this whole colony of bees, but they all have the same exact DNA. It's really what she was fed that
Yeah.
gave her this whole different body and a whole different presence. So again, our gene, that's it. That's so interesting. I mean, it's the first time I thought about it. The little caterpillar and the butterfly are the same
Yeah.
gene, they have exactly the same genes.
Yeah.
But it's a fascinating world. I always say, when you start looking at this world of genes, you're going to be bitten by the gene bug,
Yeah.
and then you're on your way to constantly wanting to learn about it.
That's true. That's very true. You can easily become obsessed pretty quickly. I mean, it's a fun obsession, if you ask me, and ask all my
Mm-hmm.
friends. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but it is fascinating what you can learn. I mean, there are mutations that are associated with everything. We learn that here in my classes. I'm taking as a genetics major here at the University of Georgia. You take classes on human genetics, and you learn so much about all the different mutations and variations in people's genomes, and how that becomes different behaviors, or different um, uh, ways people think and act or react, or what they want to eat, what they don't want to do. It's insane what you can learn about yourself. I always tell people, because I'll have friends and family, when they learn about my work, they want me to look at their genes, read their genes. And the whole reason we're making this automated service is because it can take, if I actually sat down and tried to read them manually, I could, but it would take me like 4 weeks per person. It's an incredible information. Um, but I always tell them that I am about to learn more about you than you know about yourself. And it's always, it's fun because you can learn, like I said, personality traits, or there are things you can infer. Like if I know, say myself, I know that I have a variant that makes me want caffeine more, and I also break it down much faster so I can drink more of it. What is, in a society of coffee drinkers, where does that mean I'm going to spend most of my time? You're probably going to find me with a caffeine drink near me, or you might find me studying more often in the coffee shop and stuff like that.
And me, I have just the opposite of that gene. Same gene, the 1A2, CYP1A2, it's a liver gene. It's a CYP1A2. And I don't clear caffeine, so a little bit, if I had some coffee, it would be giving me tons of energy all day long. If I ate a piece of chocolate at dinner, I wouldn't sleep that night. I would just be wired. I'd be up like cleaning everything or whatever, reading. I just couldn't fall asleep. So that's a really interesting thing to know. Some of us crave sugar. Some of us are bitter tasters. So we know we should be eating cruciferous vegetables like kale and watercress and arugula and so on. But it's so bitter to us,
right,
that we might be avoiding these really important vegetables that are helping us clear toxins from our body, preventing cancers, for example. So I always say too that there's amazing information hidden in your DNA.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of, I mean, right now you might see commercials all the time about the new app that'll tell you about your genes, right? And it's kind of useless. It's very useless. I mean, you can ask anyone who's bought one of these apps. They get this report, and then what? It's not like every time they sit down they're going to look at it and like, okay, can I read like you need someone in the middle to really interpret it. Someone who understands how to incorporate nutritional information and lifestyle, like how to approach someone to help them change their lifestyle. I mean, I might tell you all day that, yeah, if you eat fatty foods, you'll gain weight. But what are you supposed to do with that information? It's hard to avoid fatty foods. So like you need someone who can advise you on like, well, instead of fatty foods, eat this or cook it this way so it tastes better, or like, it's all the nuance in the middle that most people have missed so far. And, that's what we're trying to really hit the head on. So,
and even dietitians who come out of college, because I came to Georgia to be a dietitian, came out of college with all that training. And, even that is just the beginning. Like it takes a long, long time of studying, piling information on top of each other and getting feedback from people and all to really be able to truly put it all together and help people. So thank you for being here tonight for this whole interesting and important topic about CBD, because the world's going wild. And I think we need to bring into the conversation, what about my genes? Is it for me? Or how much should I be taking, for example?
Yeah.
So thank you
for having me. I enjoyed all of it. I hope I, helped your listeners and helped them understand some of the nuance and everything.
And to be more cautious, just don't go ahead and strong into it and think it's the best thing on earth. So
yeah,
exactly. Or maybe, and I'll tell you another big one. There's a whole lot of people that are wasting their money, just like you said, a huge amount of people. And
that's my number one thing.
Yeah, I know it is. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.